Will artificial intelligence make our kids stupid and rude? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle comes to you compliments of the members at BillWhittle.com. And I'll insert here a trigger warning. You may want to turn off all artificial intelligence devices before watching this episode. We are not responsible for what they say or do or order for you. Well, men, it's bad enough when children boss around their younger siblings and talk back to their parents. Now they bark orders at their virtual assistants and get rewarded for it. Alexa, do this. Siri, do that. Okay, Google, bring me the head of a pig. Cortana, amuse me. Copyright Brian Regan. In 2015, Americans bought some 1.7 million talking AI devices, and this year that number is expected to spike to 25 million. And that's not including all the newly sassy smartphones and the loquacious smart watches, cars, and refrigerators. Now, the vast storehouse of human knowledge is at our command, but a columnist in the Washington Post wonders how it will affect the children. I mean, after all, their young minds don't yet realize that context frames proper questions and answers. Today's artificial intelligence devices are largely devoid of context. They merely answer the question. Now, Stephen Green, these artificial intelligence devices, you know, Amazon's Alexa, Google Home, and devices like that, more to come in the future, are everywhere now. And what are the consequences of leaving your child alone with a super educated, obsequious servant? And should we even worry about it?
You know, I don't worry about it, not in the slightest. My boys have been getting hand-me-down iPhones for my wife and I since the very first iPhone that we bought back in 2007. And my kids are great. And it's because maybe we're just freaks. But I talk to Siri, and so does my wife. We speak to her politely, not because she's obsequious, but because Siri is programmed to be polite to you, just like Hey Google does and Alexa does. And I've never heard Cortana because I've never actually seen a Windows phone out in the wild, but I assume Cortana is also programmed to be polite. And so our kids hear us talking to Siri, saying please, and believe it or not, sometimes thank you, even though she's no longer listening at that point. But you hear me referring to Siri as a her, because that's how we think of her, because we've got just enough automation in our home that we're talking to Siri all the time, telling her to turn off the lights or change the thermostat or whatever. And our kids hear us doing this. And as a result, I hear my kids saying please and thank you to this artificial intelligent servant, I guess is probably the right word. And so, no, I don't worry about this. It's like anything else in the world. Set a good example and your kids are going to follow.
You know, 20 years from now, Siri is going to write a screenplay about her experience in the Green household. It's going to be called The Help, and you'll be surprised at the dirty laundry that she'll air about this.
Oh, I look forward to it, believe it or not.
Mattel is actually coming out with an AI device for babies designed to grow up with them, teaching and entertaining them. And unlike the others, it will have a setting that parents can use to force children to say please if you wish. But Bill Whittle, discerning social cues and context are important emotional intelligence skills. Even learning to argue constructively helps us to mature and to navigate human relationships. What happens to a society where the right answer is always at your child's beck and call and they never have to ask nicely?
A society like that produces young people that go out in the streets and riot in the name of peace, beat people up in the name of love, and smash windows in the name of fighting fascism. That's what happens.
In other words, it's a fantasy, right? That never happened.
Well, no, it's not. If Mattel's going to make one, it undoubtedly will happen. And like the iPad, it will be irresistible to young people. And we still don't have anything like full data on the generation that was born into the smartphone era. Even today's millennials are they're certainly had the internet their whole lives, but smart devices not so much, maybe the last 8-10 years of their lives. But what we learned from sociologists is that during the 90s and the 2000s especially, more and more parents essentially farmed off the child care responsibilities to child care centers and so on. And what we find is that there's something like 3 or 4 times as many kids with serious emotional disturbances that were in child care from the beginning of their lives versus those that were raised at home by their mothers. And I understand that this is not an option for some people sometimes. But basically, what we're talking about is this. The essential qualities of your character are determined certainly within the first 4 years of your life, and within the first 2 years of your life. Your mental stability in the future is going to depend on your interaction primarily with your mother and whether or not you feel like you are valued and protected and safe. If we come up with something that's so sophisticated that makes our kids sound smart by talking to it, I know a lot of parents are going to leap all over this and think, oh my God, I'm going to be raising an Einstein. Well, you'd be raising an Einstein in a rubber room with a straitjacket on. And this is what I worry about. It's not that I worry about the new technology. It's fantastic. I worry about the human consequences. I use Google all the time, hundreds of times a week, easily, to answer questions like, what was that? Was that Abraham Lincoln say that word? Did he say that? But I know what questions to ask. And if you don't have an education, if you don't have a fundamental worldview and a fundamental curiosity, which I think these things go a long way to kill, and imagination too, for that matter, then you don't know what questions to answer, or to ask. So what good does the answer do?
Well, George Jetson and Jane, his wife, had a robot named Rosie.
I've met him.
So I assume someday we would all have robots like Rosie, but I never considered the consequences for his boy, Elroy, or daughter, Judy. How many little parental interactions would disappear if mom and dad are no longer the fountains of knowledge, the smartest ones in the room? What's the consequence to a person's social development when arguments get settled by Alexa rather than through persuasion and personality? As the machines get smarter, will they eventually teach us to be nice to each other? And whose values will they convey? Now, these are questions that require human interaction, consideration of competing views, passion, sensitivity, and humility. In other words, these are questions that cannot be answered by Siri, Alexa, or Cortana. Training up a child in the way he should go takes more than information. It takes natural human intelligence and often supernatural wisdom. And no matter how clever the gizmos, children still need parents for those. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. You may reactivate your artificial intelligence devices at this time.